Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our second episode of A Naked Convo with. Today we have a very special guest. We have Linda Weber from True Blue Nude. You can find her at True Blue Nude on Twitter. And she's also known as Blonde Giraffe, as you guys can notice. She loves giraffes. And Linda's here so we can talk about a little bit about herself, what's going on in naturism, the different projects she's behind. And well, this is the second episode, so I want to thank Linda very much for joining us. Thank you for accepting this invitation. How are you today, Linda?
I'm doing great, Hector. Thank you for asking about having me do this. This is great.
Well, I'm glad you've accepted. We've actually had several collaborations at this point. You helped me out when I started the Naked and Proud, and also My Naked Story, and then now A Naked Combo with. As you notice, I like to explore. I like to try new things. Some things work and catch on, other things don't. But I feel that in a way, um, you you have a similar background.
Well,
You
one of the things I really appreciate is getting me into the My Naked Story and the other video, because this is not something that I feel real comfortable about. I'm an introvert. And so I thought, if I don't do this, I'm never going to do it. So you got me out of my comfort zone, and I actually enjoyed it. So I liked being able to tell, my naked story and naked and proud. So this is the next step. So I'm
it's
really excited.
funny it's funny how you mentioned that you're an introvert and you seem to be pretty comfortable with sharing your naturist experience. And I also really like that you're getting more and more involved in naturism, organized naturism. So I'm not sure where you get the introvert part from, but I'm very glad that you are willing to put yourself out there, because I feel like your story can inspire a lot of people. Especially, I think that we need more women in leadership positions. So having you participate is very, very great.
Well, thank
Um,
you.
so let's talk a little bit about Linda, about how you got into this. When was the first time that you discovered naturism? Tell us that story.
I was very young. I was in my early teens, and I just felt that clothes, when you're in like junior high and high school, there's this need to conform, to need to look like everybody else. You don't want to stand out, you want to conform. And it seemed like clothes always seemed to be a judgment tool. If you didn't have the right clothes or the right makeup, hung around with the right people, it just seemed like you were being judged superficially. And
Mhm.
so I would go home and I would just shut my clothes, and I feel much better. And the weird thing is when you're a teen, that's when you're so awkward and you don't feel confident. But I thought, wait a minute, I feel confident when I don't have my clothes on. I feel like this is the true me. And so, of course, I couldn't be nude outside. And my family was not really on board with it. But had I not been allowed to explore that portion of myself, I think I would have had more body issues. And I think that is the root of why a lot of women do not participate in nudism or naturism, because of what the body issues.
Where did you get the opportunity to explore that aspect, the naturist aspect? Was that like during the, the gym or something, where you got the opportunity to undress with other women, or did you go to a lake or a beach, or how did you experience that?
It was mostly in my home. I felt comfortable, so I'd run around without clothes. And like I said, it was is not really acceptable to my parents, but I think they knew what that was doing for me.
Hmm.
Uh, so I was more like what they consider. So I was in my 20s. I actually did social nudism, where I would go to beaches and things like that to be actually out with other people. And because I had been sort of a little bit used to being nude in the house, when I would go to the beach, I'd be more comfortable being around other people. And
Hmm.
so I think that helped. It was a little step, it was baby steps. I just didn't jump into it.
Okay. And what part of the US did you live in or grow up in?
On the west coast of California,
Okay. Is that
California native.
near San Diego or further up north?
near Ventura.
Ventura.
Ventura, been
Is
down.
Ventura closer to LA or closer to San Francisco?
It's closer to it's closer to Los Angeles, and it's closer to Santa Barbara.
Hmm.
So it's kind of on there. It's in some great beach areas.
It has a lot of really great beaches, and also the weather is nice most of the year, right?
Yes, yes.
So that makes it easy. You had a lot of opportunities growing up, especially in your 20s, to find different places where you can enjoy nudism. So you started off going to the beach and getting to know more people in naturism. And how did you eventually decide to get more involved in organized naturism?
Well, I started off on the beach and meeting people, uh, getting the more social aspect for it. Because like I said, being um, an introvert, it's not natural for me to want to just run around on the beach. But I realized when you're a naturist, people aren't judging you on your clothes or any of the superficial things. They're just talking, they're looking in your eyes, they're talking. And so you're getting into a more deeper conversation, you're getting into deeper relationships. You really feel like there's nothing that you can't really talk about because you're past all the superficial things. People don't care what job you're doing or anything like that. They just know that you have this love of naturism, and that's the bond that you carry. And I think it provides for a deeper relationship.
It definitely, what I really like about it is that you have to take the time to get to know people to know if there's something that you have in common. And it's not as superficial as whenever we're dressed, we end up judging people or people end up judging us depending on the way we dress or, certain things that might not really be a good indication of who we are. And I've noticed this in naturism because I've had the opportunity to socialize with a lot of people. And then when I see them dressed, I get the feeling that I probably would have never socialized with the person if it wasn't in a nude setting. So it definitely helps you expand your universe and see that we are probably socially conditioned to be more judgmental than we should be with others. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've actually had people say to me, if we were out on the street, we met on the street, we probably would not have interacted. It just would not have happened. But when you're new, you're past, what kind of job you have, your clothes. You're not looking at those visual cues. Here, it's just that you're all just, talking about, something else other than the superficialness of what clothing and the shackles of clothing is what I call it. That comes with that, the judgment, the whole thing around that.
And I also feel that this is one of the benefits that doesn't get enough attention. That people focus on self-esteem and a lot of great benefits that naturism has, but we don't speak as much about the social benefits, the ease that it is to sit down and have a conversation with someone and learn more about them. And it's always easy to start this conversation because we always want to know how this person ended up at a nude beach or at a nude resort. Um, and it's always very curious because it's, in a way, I think we as naturists consider ourselves to be a little bit of outsiders or people who think outside what we were, you know, what we were, I would say imposed, but what we inherited um, through our education. So I really, really like the fact that you could just sit by the pool or wherever, and people will either walk up to you or if you start a conversation, are very willing to talk. So I really like that. Um, when did you start in organized naturism? How did you pass from being a person that would enjoy recreational nude into a more of an organized setting? What motivated you to do this?
Well, actually, it was when my husband been years ago that I actually had the opportunity to be on a boat with all naturists. I mean, it was just amazing. I'm on, for a week with all these people that have that core belief from, what I do. And so it was great because we met all these people, and I still keep in contact with many of them. We went year after year. And then one year I stopped by the NR table, and I thought, I've always been a naturist. What can this do for me? And I thought, well, I can be a naturist on my own. And I ironically got sat at a table with two people that were on the Anar West board. And I thought, if that isn't serendipity, I don't know what is. Because then I was able to ask him, what can the organization do for me? What benefits? And it opened up a whole, I said it was like putting a key in a door and opening up this box that you didn't even know existed. There was clubs, there resorts, there's, different, what they call non-landed clubs, which are, travel clubs where they don't actually have a physical place. Um, that was great. So I found all these groups of people that I did not know existed. And so that's what I thought was fabulous. That's what kind of got me started, was that.
And it's great that I think in California there's a lot of clubs and a lot of opportunities and beaches and places to go. Um, I personally didn't get the opportunity to do this because when we first started in naturism, we went to San Diego and we went to Black's Beach several times, but we didn't have the opportunity to move or go to other places. So we only stayed with that experience. And there was a local community that we discovered, and we went to a gathering, but it was really funny because the youngest person was the daughter of the founder, and she was like 60 years old, and the founder of the group was like 90 years old. So we had a good time. Everyone was really sweet and very welcoming, but we didn't feel that it was what we were looking for. We wanted something a little more recreational and a little bit more of our age group. And we noticed, at least that was the experience in San Diego, that naturism appealed more to an older audience. And we wondered why. I don't know if this is something that you have noticed, or maybe in other beaches or in other resorts or clubs, it might be a little different.
No, I definitely have noticed that there is a prevalence of older people. But you figure for like Anar, they've been around for almost 90 years. And so it transitioned where it's going to be older people and they've kind of, kept going and kept going. And one of the reasons I got onto the board of directors is I could see a trend, and I was a little disturbed by it, that I didn't see the active, recruiting of younger people to take place of, the people that those are going to age off, that they weren't trying to get the new blood and the new different diversity in. And that disturbed me because I thought, at some point it's just going to end. And I didn't want to see that. And I think that's almost true with some of the other federations and groups, is if they don't actively recruit, then we're just going to die on the vine. And so I thought, that's what we need to do. We need to have change. It can't be business as usual anymore. It's not working.
Yeah, and I wonder why. I don't know if there was something that could have been done and wasn't done, or if there was an effort to avoid the participation of younger people, or if it had something to do with historical events. I don't understand where this disconnect took place, but I do notice that most of the active people on these organizations are people that are 60 plus or 50 plus. And I wonder to myself all the time, when did they stop actively promoting the continuity? As you mentioned, the problem is that there's not going to be continuity. And I think that these institutions have a huge historical value and also have built legitimacy over the years. And this can definitely help to bring security to people. And I noticed this from a country, from Mexico, that the Federation already existed when I learned about naturism, but there wasn't a whole lot of organized naturism. And I noticed when I was inviting my friends that they wanted to participate, but I wasn't giving them enough security that what I was doing or where I was taking them was something safe or legitimate, or that it actually had the intentions of what I was telling them versus everything that they have been educated to believe. Um, so I feel that institutions are super important, but I do think that there should be um, more of a younger leadership, and not only younger leadership. I think we should also have more women involved, or more people of color, or more people of different sexual orientations. And the more that we have these people in leadership positions that others can see, the more these demographics will relate to them and want to be a part of it.
I agree, but and it sounds wonderful and it's great on paper, but to actually try to implement it, that's probably one of the hardest things to do. And I can say that probably most of the people that are part of these organizations, that's what they want. But I'm finding it hard. Like I'm trying to recruit women. That's the main thing. I should say that's one of the main things that I do. But I'm, I talk to everybody. However, getting a woman to actually make that jump, because there's all the stigma that I have to try. It's almost like being a psychologist. I have to say, you're going to feel the best you've ever felt without your clothes on. Are you kidding me? I mean, we've been conditioned that we have to look good to attract a mate. So we have to have makeup, we have to have the right clothes, we have to have, everything has to be perfect. Otherwise, we are not going to attract that mate. And so trying to say, I don't wear any makeup. And that would be horrifying to anybody else. Going through high school and junior high, you had to have the makeup. And even now, when people go to work, if somebody doesn't show up in makeup, you're thinking, geez, they're sick or something's wrong. But to show your natural face, that's big.
Yeah.
Because we've been conditioned to have all these, stigmas. So not only am I saying, oh, I'd like to try to get you in nature because it's body positivity, you'll feel better. I'm having to try to say, when you're not wearing makeup or you're not wearing the clothes or you don't have those outside shackles, you're going to feel better about yourself. But you've got Hollywood and the media saying, their favorite thing is to expose how terrible you look. If they were to join Naturism, that would disappear. That's something that they hold over their heads. That would disappear. And this whole thing about having to wear the right clothes and the right makeup, if we could get rid of that, do you understand how powerful that would be? We would just own everything.
I
But
agree.
it's trying to get, all that stigma, trying to get, erase that before we can even talk and have the conversation.
And I think it's especially hard in your part of the US. I was shocked when we went to San Diego how big plastic surgery was, how big the fit culture is, how big all these different diets and just I don't know. I mean, people looked great, but there was there was definitely a vibe that what we were seeing was not natural. And we noticed this especially in Black speech, that out of 10 women that we would see, 8 clearly had plastic surgery. One we weren't very sure, and maybe the last one was probably natural. And I did notice that I had an effect, or I felt something, um, like a sort of a disconnection, or that there was something wrong with my body because I didn't meet the standards. Like all the guys were buff and they were athletic and they were, um, I don't know, they just had like this unrealistic body standard that they had to meet and that I didn't feel a part of. So I feel that in a society that gives so much importance to appearance, it's especially hard to break with this idea that you're you're perfect the way you are. Sometimes people think that that's a little bit of BS because they always say, "Oh, it's easy for you to say because you or whatever." Especially when the person who is trying to promote body positivity meets some of these beauty standards, it becomes really hard for people to connect with the message. I don't know if that's something that you have noticed, or it was just something that we noticed because we were, from a country where that's not normal.
Oh, no, definitely. Being close to Hollywood, I mean, that's all you see is, these perfect plastic people. And you can tell that there's this need to have to, have plastic surgery because you have to look young, you're going to lose jobs. You always hear about the women that say, I've lost out on a job because I didn't, conform to the standards. So there's this repetitive message that if you don't look perfect, that you don't look young, that you don't conform to what society thinks you should, then you're going to lose out on jobs and men and all kinds of prospects. And so there is that constant reinforcement that that's why I'm saying there's so much stuff that you have to shave off before you can even have the
Yeah.
conversation with women.
And I think that another strategy that I've noticed that works better, because we had this issue when we started our community. We wanted to attract more women because we wanted there to be a more of a safe and comfortable environment. And we tried several strategies that targeted women directly and noticed that those strategies were a complete disaster. And what we noticed did work was all of the indirect work that we would do. I don't know if you remember my videos, and I no longer have a platform where people can access them because of a long history that I don't want to go into, but I've been closed and shut down by several platforms. But one of the strategies that we implemented was to show more women, or to show older people, or to show more couples, or to show, and we tried to create, in a way it was an artificial image of what it was, but I think that at the end of the day it was very beneficial because it allowed more people to feel welcome. So what I would suggest as a strategy is stop trying to target women or minorities directly, and find a way to give more of the platform to those who do exist in the community. And if they don't exist, I think Nick, or I think it was Nick from one of the webinars, mentioned that um, if you can't find someone, then pay someone. No? If you have the resources and have the opportunity, if you can't find someone, pay someone. And some people might not like this idea because it's not genuine, it's not real, but it's a way to start, to pay someone that could be an image. But I also really like the approach that you have, that through the I am a face of naturism, you try to share a platform, or to give a platform to those people to understand that they can attract more people that are similar to them. Can you tell us a little bit about I am the face of naturism?
That's one of the first things that when I joined ANR, I thought, how can I relate to people and have them say, okay, I understand about naturism, because a conversation, it's not something that's natural and you just want to hop out there and say something. But I was trying to think, if we could show that we are just like them, we're the neighbors, we work with you, our kids go to your schools, because there seems to be this stigma, and I get this all the time about the fact that they think that there's a sexual component to it, or that we're hippies, just running around with this free love. And so the minute you take your clothes off, there's got to be something that's sexual with it. And so I'm trying to say that, a lot of people have said, I didn't know you were a naturist, and it's just one of those things. I know, do we have horns and a tail? I mean, do we look different? No, we don't. We look just like you. But we prescribe to this philosophy, bodies, respecting our bodies, and that we love to do things nude. And it's in, non-sexual, family-oriented, it's wholesome. And so trying to say, we allow families, we just love, families. And that's, something that we would like to, foster more of. And when you say families, some people are like horrified, they're thinking kids, but some people are saying, oh, well, if it's family oriented, then we know things aren't going to, happen on a sexual thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we also noticed that
So
when we
from
started.
the face of naturism, but we're all the face of naturism. That's, we all have that responsibility to show that this is what we look like. We're just like you, so we can relate on that level.
Yeah, and this is something that we noticed when we started our community. NNG, if people are familiar with the logo, it's a mother playing with her child, and they're both undressed. Unfortunately, because of the nuances in Mexican culture, we decided to shift away from family naturism, because when I was advised by a lawyer that there isn't any history in Mexico of communities like there is in the States or in Europe. So if there was a lawsuit, it would become very politicized, and very also a lot of social pressure, because they would be concerned about the security of children. I mean, and it makes perfect sense. But there's no real way for us to defend ourselves, especially because back then I was becoming more involved with the federation. I was elected as the president, and I also had this massive platform on YouTube. And we just decided that it's going to be easier to defend another community if this ever happens to them. But if it happens to us, we were defenseless. So we shifted a little bit away from that. But going back to what I wanted to say before I got off topic was that the idea of naturism practice with a mother and their child is a very innocent depiction of nudity, and it also gives people the confidence or the security that there isn't a hidden agenda behind it.
I would agree. And I think historically, you've seen some of the clubs where, and in the vintage naturism pictures, you do see families. You do see families where some of these people have actually grown up with, naturism, where you don't see that now. And so there's that disconnect. And had that been able to continue, we probably wouldn't have a lot of the issues we have now. But, as things change and times change and laws, I mean, I understand that there's, a worry about child pornography and exposing children. A lot of people don't want their picture, the pictures taken. But then it also is a stigma saying, if we're hiding children, what are we hiding them from? And so
Yes.
in order to protect them from one thing, we're also kind of negating the fact that it's a healthy thing to have families. So it's not, there's a lot of things that it's easy to say, okay, we're going to do this and we need to promote families. But to actually put it in practice is very difficult, because we don't want some people don't want pictures of their kids, because now that we have the advent of the internet, it could go anywhere. And so I think as we've progressed and we've had technology changes, the social mores, how they've changed, that has affected a lot of the forward, and sometimes we have to take a few steps back.
So, as you mentioned, I do feel like it's a little bit of a more difficult time for family naturism because, there's a lot of social pressure and a lot of outrage. And it's really hard to find what to do if we should go further into wanting to explain and educate, or if we backtrack a little bit and avoid showing children in the pictures and the advertising. But that also has the danger of shifting more into an adult only naturism. And that's going to, it defies the purpose of having naturism welcoming for everyone, regardless of age, sexual orientation, race, and so on. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, especially for a national institution that promotes it online. That, and it's also really, really difficult to get the message out because we're systematically censored.
Oh, that's one of the biggest rubs, is because we want to show that we're family friendly, but until people can feel comfortable about bringing, their kids to the beaches or resorts or anything like that. But then I know there is that dynamic that we do with the internet. Your picture can go anywhere, and so you could have a perfectly innocent picture, but it's distorted and taken, and then the message is now, something. So I understand that. So it's trying to weigh, saying we would like to have families there, and we'd like to have them in the pictures to show that we do have family friendly. But I can understand where the issue is. I would, if I had children, I would want to protect them from the little seedier side, perhaps the internet or things like that. But that's the rub. How do you show that and balance that?
And it's really complicated because we share a message that has a very clear intention, but as soon as you post it, you have no control over that message or the intention or the way that people perceive it or what they do with it. And I'm pretty sure that you, as a woman promoting naturism, has experienced some of this nasty side of the internet. Can you tell us a little bit about those experiences?
Yeah, I have to tell you, like I said, I'm an introvert, and so for me to actually go on to social media was a huge decision. And I talked to my husband extensively and said, what are the pros and what are the cons? But I realized that if I want to see like myself, women at the clubs, I had to show them that I was willing to do that. I'm not a do as I say. I'm like boots on the ground. I want to say, here I am. So my thing was, if I can do it, you can do it. And so getting out on there, and I would say for the most part, it's been positive. I get great comments. I have talked to people and women and men about the positives, but I've had the seedier side of it, and it has gotten me down, and it is a little scary. I'm getting better at it, because I vet a lot of people and get most of the people that are there for the wrong reasons. But that's a real concern, and it has affected me before. And so for a woman just starting out, that could really be a deal breaker. It could just set her right back. And so I understand that, but I'm willing to take that chance to show somebody that, hey, I've done it. I think you can do that too.
When did your interest to go online first start? What happened that motivated you to do this? You mentioned that you wanted to see more women involved. So how did this evolve? Because it's really hard to go from just being a naturist to getting involved in an organization and then taking the next step to go online.
Oh, it was. It was a progression. Like I mentioned, I sat with two of Ann West board members on the Big Dude boat, and I grilled them. I honestly grilled them about what can this do for me? What kind of people are there? What are the resorts or the beaches? What can I avail myself? And so then once I became a member, I started attending the meetings, and I attended all kinds of meetings, even outside of my area. And I'll be honest, I was very concerned about the fact that I didn't see the organization, if they were going the way they were going and the status quo, and we've always done business like this in the past, I didn't see them lasting for very long,
No.
because that's not an excuse. That may be the reason, but I became concerned. So then I thought, instead of pointing fingers and being a keyboard warrior and folding my arms and saying, I want somebody else to do my business, I want somebody else to solve my problems, I thought, I'm the best one because I want them solved. And so that's when I thought, what can I do? So I started looking on Twitter, and there are women in it, but there's not a lot of women that are willing to get out there and say, this is what I stand for, this is what I want to see. And so not only did I start with Twitter, but I thought, I'm going to expand myself. And I got on the board of directors for Ann West. So now I feel like I can be a real force for change, because I actually have a voice. All members have a voice. Everyone has a voice. They can be the change agents that they want to see. They just have to step up. And that's the problem, is getting people from sitting there being keyboard warriors, expecting everybody else to say, okay, you're going to solve all the problems that we have and everything's going to be wonderful. No, you have to be a part of it. And I'm willing to be a part of it. I may not be able to do all the changes that I want in my lifetime. I might be able to affect a little bit, but I want to be able to say, I tried. I got out there. I got on Twitter. I've been out on social media on the other platforms, but I'm actually doing something about that.
Why did you choose Twitter, or how did you end up in Twitter?
I'm actually on Twitter and MeWe and Naturist Hub with the Naked Wanderers, and I've been on had the best reach. And with I won't do Facebook because you can't have nudity, and it seems like you smile wrong and the algorithm will pop you off. And I thought, I don't need to have that constant worry about what do they think that is, the prevailing wind of the day, that they're going to pull somebody off. And I mean, I know what that's like. You're one day fine, and then all of a sudden you've got all of your videos taken away. That must have been that must have been devastating to you.
Well, I think that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, because I had been thinking about this for a very long time. When I first started my channel, I was creating content uncensored. Then I had to censor myself because I was getting constantly videos taken down, and I had the threat that I was going to lose my channel. So I started censoring myself. Then I found out how the algorithm worked. I found out how the community guidelines were enforced, what I needed to do. So I found like a way around it. and I started creating content that was uncensored again. And when I discovered this and I saw that my channel was growing, I always had the idea that maybe someday it would be taken down. And that's why I think that when it happened, it wasn't really that big of a surprise. I was in the middle of, well, it was the beginning of the quarantine. I was sitting down at the computer, I was playing a game. I received an email from YouTube that said that they had taken down my channel. I finished playing the game and I went to bed. I told Andrea, my fiance, that my channel has been taken down, and I just went to bed. It was relaxed. The next day when I woke up, I was calm and I started seeing if there was anything that I could do about it. But I didn't really. I think the quarantine affected me more than actually losing the channel. And it's funny because I had invested so much time and effort and resources, and I just went all out on that channel. But I understood that it was something temporary, and I think that I was able to take advantage of that temporary moment, and I don't regret it. But it's extremely frustrating to know that tomorrow all your hard work is going to disappear and there's nothing that you can do about it.
And that's the disappointing part, is that the kinds of things that you're doing and a lot of the naturists are doing are not anything that should attract the wrong kind of attention or make people want to do reports. There is such a proliferation of porn out there that I would think that that would be, something that they could spend all day and all night trying to take down. But yet, what is it about a naturist video or talking about being nude that just strikes, fear in the heart of these people, that they feel that they need to take it down? Or that's the part that I don't understand, is they seem like they're targeting the most banal stuff, but yet there's a lot of stuff that that just curls my hair, that it just stays up.
Yeah, and I think that censorship is very interesting and funny because the idea behind censorship is to protect. You want to protect a certain idea, or you want to protect in a status quo, or you want to protect those that are incapable of protecting themselves, such as children or whatever. But when you censor something or someone, you're actually reinforcing the problem, because if if you think nudity is wrong and you censor all types of nudity regardless of the context, you will continue to protect the idea that nudity is wrong. So there's nothing that another person can do to convince you or to educate you otherwise. So it creates echo chambers that reinforce the already established ideas. And some of these ideas are wrong. Some of these ideas are harmful and at the end of the day become a burden to society. But there's nothing that you can do about it, because the moment that you want to speak against it, or the moment that you want to give an examples of something different, that's the moment that you are systematically censored and shut down, and there's no discussion. So I think that censorship at the end of the day does more harm than what it actually helps. But that's also probably controversial because right now there's a lot of things going on, specifically with the politics of your country, and sometimes we would wish that they would censor, but then I don't know. I consider myself to be anti-censorship, so I don't really know where to draw the line.
No, I agree. I'm a big First Amendment, because I believe that we have these protections. Unfortunately, some people take the First Amendment and think they can just trash things, or give a false narrative to it. And I think that's what is worse. My thing is, if you don't like it, move on. Go to something else. I'm sure there's 50 other things that you could decide to trash. But something as wholesome as naturism, I feel sometimes that they target that just because they don't understand, the fundamental thing that goes back into, we're all running around having sex, and we're hippies, and the orgies and stuff like that, because clothes off equals sex. And I think they just target anything like that under this big blanket. And that's the part that I get really frustrated at.
Yeah, and I would also consider myself anti-prohibitionist. I think that prohibition is another big problem. Like when they banned alcohol in the US, instead of avoiding people from falling into alcoholism, they created really strong criminal institutions. Crime rates went up. Addiction got even worse because there was no way to regulate what type of alcohol people were consuming, and they weren't really attacking the problem that is addiction and not alcohol. And I think the same thing goes for the way that people perceive sex, or the way that people perceive, the use of drugs or other things, that I don't feel like they are bad, and I don't feel like you should stop people from trying to do them. I think we should probably have a more comprehensive approach where we educate people so they could be better equipped to make better decisions. That's, for example, sex education is a big problem here in Mexico because the families are against it, because they think that children shouldn't be educated by sex because it's something that the family is in charge of doing. The thing is, the family doesn't have any type of sexual education. So there's a lot of rates of young women getting impregnated, or STDs, or just a lot of really bad issues that you could prevent by educating people and letting them choose what's best for them.
I mean, that's a great analogy, because if the parents, or they did, have the classes where they did teach them, that would take away the stigma of it. But they're afraid that if they tell them about that, then they're opening up their knowledge lines, and then something's going to happen. But I think a lot of the misnomers are when you don't understand something, or when you try to tamp it down. If you try to tamp it down, people want to know what's under there. What
Yeah.
do you hide? Yeah. And also you have to remember, if you're going to punish something, or you're going to take something away from somebody, there's somebody that's always going to want to do that anyway. So how are they going to get around that? So I always used to think, if I say no on something, how is somebody going to get around that? And so you have to modify the behavior. But when you modify the behavior, you have to make sure you modify the behavior in the correct way, and not in some other way that's going to cause, far more problems.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So let's go back to the organized naturism. How has your experience been in Ann West? I've been a little bit critic of some of these institutions because I feel like they have failed to get with the times, and that makes them less attractive. And I also criticize sometimes the business model, that I personally don't see that it's a business model based on providing value. It's more like a business model based on closed gates, that if you want to go through, you have to pay me. So these type of things. But I also understand that not everyone in these institutions believe that the institution is headed towards the right direction, and that's why they decide to get involved. But sometimes it's funny, because you decide to get involved because you want things to change, but then people who want things to change target you as part of the problem that you're trying to solve. So it becomes an interesting dilemma of what you can do and what you can't do and what you should do and so on. So how's your experience been in organized naturism?
Well, like I said, when I sat in on some of the meetings, I was for ANR, I was a little disturbed, because I would hear the status quo, or this is how we've always done it, when there's been some questions, or that would be too difficult to implement. And I was real concerned. And I told my husband, I said, I don't want to join a sinking ship. And I don't feel like I can support. I will never be a part of anything I can support, wholeheartedly. And so with ANARS, I did have some concerns, and I did say that. And so when I decided to become on the board of directors, my speech was I was very vehement. And I said, there's things that I'm going to want to implement that you're not going to want to hear, because this is something new, or it might be a little frightening. It's going to be out of the box, but I don't believe that if we stay the way that we're doing, we're going to exist in 10 years. And I don't want to see that. And I see that with a lot of the organizations. And so that's why I said, I need to be a part of it, because if I feel strongly about it, I got to do something about it. And like I said, if I'm not effective, like I'm not able to do everything that I want, I can say that I at least tried.
Yeah.
Instead of sitting back and saying, well, I expect the organization to change, but they don't know that I believe that there's things that need to be done. And that's why I'm part of British Naturism, Irish Naturist Association, the Naturist Society, as well as ANAR, because I want to be a part of some other global commonality of, there's some things that we all agree that it's hard to change, but there are some, places where, like, British Naturism does some real great things with their women where they've had success. Well, I work with Donna Price because I want to know how I can replicate that success here. And I think it's great that we share that. And that's what I want to do, is share. If we have something that works, why not share it with everybody? Because it only benefits it. Don't, keep it. And nobody's doing that. No one's saying, well, I'm not going to share this because we want to be the best organization and we want you to fail. There's nothing like that.
No.
But I've noticed that there's a real, camaraderie where people are saying, this is what's working for us, because there's a lot of things that I want to do, but and like I said, it's great on paper, but it falls flat for the implementation because, this is something I'm just learning, but they've done it before and this is a success they've had, or they've said, maybe you need to move in this little bit, different direction because this is what, has worked for us. And so that's why I'm part of the different organizations, to actually get the conversation going, especially with the global forum that we had that you participated in. I had some great takeaways. I'm, writing all these notes.
I think one of the things that I definitely appreciate about this pandemic and everyone being locked up at home without many things to do is the willingness to collaborate. And I think that it's really great that I lost my channel during this time because it forced me to go into Twitter. And I really like how the community is involved and there's a lot of discussions and there's a lot of things that are taking place. And from this chaos and from everyone being locked up at home, more and more people wanted to get involved and participate. And as you mentioned before, I think that people should get more involved and be less critical. And not that there's anything wrong with saying that there's areas of opportunity, that is great. But if you're only doing this behind a keyboard, we're missing out on a lot of people that could be contributing to that change that they would like to see. And for me, it's 1,000 times more valuable to have someone who doesn't agree involved than just someone who is complaining, because we can all complain. And I know that people have time restrictions and they can't participate as much as they'd like to, but there's a difference between some participation and no participation. And whatever you can do at the end of the day will add up to make the change. And we also have to see this as a progress. I understand that things could be better, but that's always going to be true. Things can always be better. And that gives us something to aim our attention and our efforts to, trying to reach that promised land. I think the idea of reaching a promised land is very valuable because we continue, we go on. We might never reach it, but that's not important. The important thing is that we're doing our best to create that world we want to live in.
Absolutely. I think if you deny that we need to make changes, you're sunk right there. And I don't think any of the organizations are actually saying, we want to just keep the status quo because we think it's working and it's going to be too hard to change. I think they do want to change. It's just trying to implement all the different things that are coming into play. And that's what makes it difficult.
Well, you'd be surprised. I'm not sure I agree with that. After going to the World Congress at the INF, I heard a lot of, well, there's nothing wrong. Well, everything is perfect. Well, why should we change? That came from a lot of the international organizations, especially the status quo, and some of the directors of this institution. And for me, it's such a shame because when we went to the INF, we were very motivated because we wanted to get involved in things that were going on internationally. I mean, I come from a country that doesn't have a long history of nudism, Mexico, but I thought that it was because we weren't getting involved enough. But then when I went to this organization, I noticed that they had no interest in working together or collaborating or doing anything, because I didn't expect them to save us. I think that's a huge mistake. We don't need to be saved, but we do need to work together. But that wasn't my experience, and that's why I think I am a little bit critical of the current board of directors of the INF, but because I believe that this institution is extremely valuable, and it would be a shame if we lose it. And it's already had the last 12 years of not doing anything really special. And it's not like a targeted criticism to the board of directors itself. It's just the systematic situation that they have built to make people not want to get involved because they feel like it's not worth doing. And it's become like a small group of friends. And I think that this is something that could happen to any organization if they lose focus. And I'm glad that an organization like Anner, that I also feel has been, being pushed back in time, is open of having more people getting involved. That's a great way to start. And I'm also very happy of organizations like British Naturism that understood that, we're not headed in the right direction. We need to be more involved in social media. We need to be more involved in studies that have to do with naturism in universities. We need to be more involved with the LGBTQ community. And I think so far they have been doing a great job.
I think they're starting to see the writing wall, people like me that are not letting up on the conversation. I mean, at my board meeting, I was extremely vocal, and they're saying, "I thought you said you were an introvert." And I said, there's something about when I'm very passionate about something that I just feel that it just comes right out. And I am very passionate about it. I am very passionate about it being a success of changing. But the thing is I can't do it myself.
No.
And we can't expect the organizations to make decisions in a vacuum. I mean, if we all just are in the board of directors, we all think that we know something, we need to hear from the members. And that's just it. If the members aren't telling us what they want, but they have to be constructive about it, and they have to understand that there are constraints and there's things that maybe can't happen right away. But it's one of those things, you can't change what you don't know. And so I sometimes the conversations on social media are kind of painful, or I've there's some realizations that I didn't know about. Like somebody at the very beginning said, I'm a single male and I'm discriminated on the clubs
Yeah.
because they have quotas. I had no idea. Actually, was a shock to me, and I thought, wow, that's not right. And so when I kind of researched into it, I understand why this came into play, because I know what it's like to walk into a room and be the only woman, and I'm looking at 20 guys. And that could be very daunting for someone that is, I'm comfortable with that and I don't have a problem. But for anybody else, that could make a woman just turn and run and say, I'm not going to join that. And so it's one of those things that my eyes were open to several things that I didn't know existed. I'm a naturist. I thought everybody loved everybody and everything was, hunky dory. And so I'm learning too, but it's also, I've learned things, but how can we implement that and make sure that the reason clubs have rules is because something happened that they needed to make the rules. And so we have to understand that, those came out of something that happened or they wanted to mitigate. But we're such a small niche group that we need to embrace everyone that wants to be one. We can't turn anybody away. And so it's one of those things, like I said, we know that there's issues, but how do we change that? And so that we can I can't say we'll make everybody happy for anything, but if we can embrace the majority and change things for the better. And like I said, it sounds so wonderful on paper. I've got all this stuff, but to actually implement it, sometimes it's a little bit longer process, or it's really getting that change on how we can get that implemented so it's a success and not a failure again.
I agree. But I do feel like there has been a systematic discrimination. I've heard horror stories of people who used to be members of these clubs and their spouse passed away and he no longer has a wife. So he's been banned from the groups. You're no longer welcome because you're not bringing a woman. And I mean, that's the worst thing that you could do to a person that is already grieving the loss of a loved one, to kick them out of the community because they no longer have their passport that is a woman. I think some of these practices are definitely wrong. And it's funny because I don't know if you would agree with me on this, but I've noticed that the people that are mostly vocal about not having women participate are the men. And I don't know, I don't want to say that it's probably motivated by this, but I've noticed that heterosexual men have a problem with not having enough women in naturism. And I've heard this complaint more by men than I have by women. And I don't know if it's because they're more vocal or because women are not as concerned whether there's 50-50 as long as they feel safe and comfortable. What would you think about this?
That was one of the things I have talked to men about that. I always say, okay, what is your perception? And sometimes it's a little off. They're saying, well, we want more women, because we want women to talk to. And I say, well, it's not a dating scene. You're there to be, you're a naturist. And so if you're looking to hook up with somebody, maybe you're not there for the right reason. And so it's like sometimes they say, well, we walk in and it's all men. I don't see that as a problem. Why would that be a problem if you are a naturist and you're there and you just want to talk to people? And so I'm concerned about why they feel that they need that quota. But I don't agree with the fact that if you're a man, you have to have a woman with you.
No.
I understand that they have quotas because they don't want, where a woman does. I've walked into places and I mean, it took me back for a little bit, but then I feel comfortable where I was the only woman in a group full of men. And they're all just staring at me, but they're naturist, so I know that they're just looking at me because I'm not a man, I'm a woman. There for they're probably surprised. But it's like I understand the quotas because they want the comfort level, but is that right? Why are we excluding some of the naturists where they can't go, or they have to try to drag somebody with them just so they can feel validated? And I don't agree. I understand the clubs want to have that where the people feel comfortable, like the women feel comfortable. So that's why they have the quotas. But then when you have the quota, then you're excluding somebody. And that's what I'm saying. Some of these things sound so, you need to solve these things. How do you solve that? Well, women are, and the whole diversity and the people of color and trying to get those in. Well, sure, but then you're targeting them like you feel like they feel targeted. And when you say, hey, you want to come because, hey, you're going to be, doing a quota for us, that's wrong. And so,
Yeah.
like I said, it's all this stuff that we have to think about that. I just trying to figure out what is the answer that is going to be, that will serve the most people. And it's a difficult thing. It's an ongoing thing for people like us.
It is. Do you think women are less interested in naturism than men are?
From my perspective, having a conversation with a woman it's like, wait a minute, you take your clothes off and you don't wear makeup and you're walking in and there's a bunch of men looking at you. And I have to say, no, it's not like that. When I have a conversation with a man, he's looking right at my eyes. In fact, I always joke that the naturists are the only ones that actually know the color of my eyes. My friends don't, because they're too busy looking to see if I have the best clothes or my shoes match or, my purse is, the most, current. Because they're looking at all the other visual cues. But, naturists know that they're just focusing on your personality. So they're looking at your eyes. They're not looking at anything. Do people look? Yes, they do. To deny that they don't, but for the most, I couldn't even, identify half the guys, by body parts. If they said, hey, we're going to line up by body parts, that's not what I focus on because that's not when I'm there. But, the women seem to think that, boy, you go there and that's all the men are going to do is look at you. And it's not true. But to try to tell somebody that, it's hard to convince them.
What do you think scares them the most? Does the fact that more men than women participate, or is it the fact that they don't feel like they're good enough, or they probably feel like they'll be judged, or they don't meet the standards? Like, what is the main concern that you get when you talk to a woman about naturism?
I do not have the body to be nude.
So that's number one.
Yes. Are you kidding me? I am not taking my clothes off, and because I'm fat or I've got lumps and I'm that. And why is that? Because we've been conditioned to say you don't have a perfect body unless you've got clothes on or a great bathing suit that covers up everything. And the minute you take that off, there's nothing to hide behind. I always get that. I don't have the body to be nude. Number one.
It's really hard to convince someone otherwise, because you could tell them that it's not about that, that it's diversity and that all sorts of people and bodies go. But at the end of the day, it's really hard to mute that voice that they already have, that they're not good enough. And if you try to convince them, then they become defensive. And it's also not a good strategy. So I personally think that an indirect strategy would be more successful, to have more women in leadership positions will make women feel that, okay, so if she's doing it, then I can do it. And also for women to be able to see a lot of diversity in body types. Of course, some are thin and athletic, but there's also short people, tall people, there's big people, skinny people, and the more that you see that, the more that you can see someone that maybe looks like you, and you can want to be a part of it. And this strategy, I think, has been implemented in CSI and all these type of detective soap operas or series, or I don't know what to call them, that there's a story and you see that there's women that are very active in certain types of jobs, and then those types of jobs skyrocket the participation in women, because we're conditioned to imitate what we see. So they're not spending 45 minutes an episode saying that women should be more involved. They're creating the scenario where they are more involved, and that helps women want to be involved. So maybe
Yes.
an indirect strategy might be more successful. But we also have to ask ourselves, why do we want more women to participate? Is it because I would like to see more women as a heterosexual male? If that's the motivation, then I think that's wrong, because we're not creating the environment that will make them feel safe and comfortable, because the moment that they go, they're going to be the center of attention. Everyone wants to talk to them. You want to ask them for their number and maybe out on a date and so on. So it's like, what's the motivation behind this? But if the motivation is that there's women who have been participating but don't feel comfortable because they're outnumbered, then okay, that might be another scenario where we can build an environment where she doesn't feel that. But if she feels that, what's causing that sentiment? When you go to a football game, or when you go to the supermarket, or when you go to any other place, do you look around and say, oh, there's only men here, I don't want to go in? And why should it be any different in naturism?
Uh, that's the one thing I was thinking about, because my focus is women in naturism, because I want to be that beacon and say, if I can do it, you can do it. But I've kind of shifted more to just expanding it to anybody that wants to be it, because if I do it for anybody, then women might kind of come. But a lot of times I'm contacted about, hey, I would like to get my girlfriend, wife, sister, how do I do it? And so I'm thinking, if men can kind of be a beacon and say, hey, this is what's great, you meet other women, or you meet some great people, they don't care what your body looks like. Men have a direct result on that. They can actually affect more change, because they feel comfortable, so they can say, hey, listen, you go there, you're going to feel comfortable, you might meet some other people, you'll meet some great people. So men can be a curse on it, because we've seen that, but they can also be really helpful and support that. And that's what we need. Women can't just attract women.
Yeah,
Men have to do their job too, and they have to understand what it is for a woman to actually get out there and go to the clubs, or go to the beach, or become nude at the beginning. And so it's just not women trying to recruit women. I'm trying to get men to say, let's have some, and it's all about respect. They always say, well, how can I get her to go to the club or do this with me? And I always say, it's respect. You have to respect the fact that we're having to undo all the stigma. This is not going to be natural, because if she isn't doing it now, what can you do? I always say, like, start in your backyard pool. It's probably pretty safe. Or take your clothes off in the house. How does she feel? Is she okay about it? Can you maybe go to the next step? But I say never push, never criticize or ridicule. It's always positive. Hey, I really appreciated that you went to the club. Thank you for trying it out with me. This is great. And I've had great success with that because the men are supporting the women, not having the conversation, but men supporting it.
I think you touched on a um, very important thing, that there's this false idea that if women are actively recruiting women, more women would come, and that's not true, because the best person to invite someone to a naturist gathering is a person that you trust, is a person that you respect or that you love or that you feel safe around this person. So if this person is someone that you have, I'm not sure if the word confidence is right. It's probably a translation from my Spanish to English. But if this is a person that you trust and this person is inviting you, that would be much more effective than if another random woman tries to convince you that you should do it. That's one thing. The other thing is, I feel like the first question should be whether this person is interested in participating before we start doing anything. If this person expresses that they are not interested in participating, it would be a horrible mistake for us to try to convince them otherwise. And I say this on personal experience because when I discovered naturism, for me, it was the best thing in the world, and I couldn't stop talking about it. And I wanted to share it with everyone. I didn't understand why we couldn't just all take our clothes off. So, so I went with this enthusiasm to try to convince people. And I noticed that I can't convince anyone because people are either interested or not. And they might be interested and they don't feel the confidence, or they don't, they're not ready for it. And then maybe we can do some work to help them, to prepare them. But if they're not interested, there's nothing that you can do. So we have to, establish what is the circumstance. And I've also noticed that when you talk about naturism, or when you share naturism, or when someone comes in contact with it, there's like a switch. There's something that turns on, and people know that they're interested in it or that they're not. And I don't know if that's like a chip or a gen or something that we notice have. The first time I discovered that there was a World Naked Bike ride, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Like the idea of going made me nervous, but I wanted to do it. And I don't know if that's something that you experienced as well. And and if we understand this, then we know that there's nothing that we can do to convince anyone to do anything.
No, I agree. In fact, when you were talking about, you couldn't imagine why everybody would want to be nude. I'm thinking that is so me. I mean, I've actually got my clothes on in the house, and this is so odd. And the only reason I do is when I'm walking my dog. So my dog thinks that we're going on a walk because I've got my clothes on.
If
Because
you're
I never have my clothes on. I just don't. It's just one of those things that I always say, why wouldn't you? But that's one of those things that I have to remember. I love it, and I try to convey that. But it all comes down to respect. I always say you have to respect what kind of stigmas they're having. It could be religious, it could be familial, it could be a job. I mean, you understand that. It could be a job where it doesn't matter how convincing, and I'm a great salesman and I can convince you to do it. But if your job is going to fire you, or your family might shun you, or your religion might have a problem, you have to respect that there may be boundaries. Not everybody can do this. And so you have to, sometimes people can be kind of skinny dipping. Most people can do that. That's fun. They can do it once, and maybe, you can get a gauge on if that might be something that they could expand on. But if you start seeing some backpedaling, you have to respect that and not push them. And that's what it really comes down to. It's not going to be for everybody, and we have to respect that, and we have to remember that. And so, you could bring up the conversation, but you really have to get in those cues. And I get excited. It's like anything. You think you can talk, into anything, but you have to remember that they might have something that they are carrying that's going to prevent them.
And that's perfectly valid. But what I did notice is that most of the people like myself that discovered it and were immediately attracted to it, the first thing that we question ourselves is, why didn't I know this before? Like, why haven't I seen this somewhere else? And I think that's when I started shifting my strategy from wanting to convince someone to making sure that the information was available to whoever did want to take part in it. And that's why I feel like social media and campaigns and advertising and so on is so important and valuable, because what we need to do is we need to make the message available to whoever does want to participate. And I'm sure that there's millions and millions of people out there that have never heard of naturism in their life. And the moment that they do, it's like, wow, why didn't I discover this before?
Oh no, that's true. I've actually heard that is I'm so old and I just now discovered it. But I always say at the age that you discover it is that's when you were ready for it. Now that was when you could embrace it. I mean, you can't say, gee, I wish I would have known about it 20 years ago. It's just that maybe that part in your life wasn't, you weren't ready or the information wasn't there. And so you can't have regrets. When you discovered it is when you were open and ready and the information was available to you.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I want the clubs and the federations and all these groups that have been closed behind huge fences and shut doors to open up a little bit more and to express and communicate. And I think that I Am the Face of Naturism is very valuable, the project that you have, because it empowers people to understand that they have a very valuable platform to get the message out there. And that is ultimately going to normalize it, because if we have a stigma of something that we don't know, the best way to get rid of the stigma is to become familiar with it. And society will eventually change the way that they think about nudism, naturism, or naturist, or whatever, the more in contact they are with them. And that doesn't mean they need to see us naked all the time. It means that we need to be open and willing to have a conversation about why we enjoy taking our clothes off and socializing with people naked.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And the more positive light that we can show on it. And also I dispel a lot of rumors when, people will ask me about questions and say, well, does everybody stare at each other? Or, what do you do if that you feel uncomfortable? There's a lot of people have questions. So if you can kind of allay some of their concerns before they ever go to a beach or a social situation, they'll feel like they're more forearmed and forewarned. And so, I know that you've done some great videos like, what if you get an erection? It's a natural thing and you want to address it. It's kind of scary to talk about it because you're thinking, wait a minute, this happens, but some people it does, you never see it, but what if you do? This is a way that you can, we can dispel that. Or what if something happens, or what if a guy hits on you, what can you do, can you say? So if there's certain things that you can take away their fears, then that the education I think is huge. And that's what I'm always trying to do, is figure out how can I educate, or how can I say something in a way that's going to translate to what they're looking for, that will allay what they have, that would be the one thing that's keeping them from actually making the jump.
And it's really funny now that you bring up the erection thing, that there's a lot of concerns that people have that they, in a way, because they're not familiar with the situation, believe that it's a huge deal and that, it could be the worst thing in the world. But when you tell them, like, for example, I tell men that it's very unlikely for them to get an erection because it's not something that we commonly see, and because it's not a sexualized environment, because their mind is focused on other things and so on. They're convinced that, I am the most sexual being that has ever existed on the face of the earth, and I will 100% get an erection. It's like, okay, so if you get an erection, then what you need to do, relax, sit down, let the body do what the body does, and then go on with your life. And um and you know sometimes it's more the fear of getting an erection than the actual erection itself. And I think that the same goes for other things, like, for example, women who feel like their body is not good enough. They're probably more concerned about their body not being good enough than what anyone else really cares about. So, but it's really hard for them. It's really hard to convince someone something that they have already set their mind to. But the more information we have, the more resources we can provide them. And if it's something that they will eventually want to do, I think that that would make it easier on them. So creating content, educating is very important. And that's why I'm really happy with what BN and Irish Naturism has been doing with all of these webinars, that there's a lot of interesting topics that people want to hear about, and they get really good people to talk about those topics, and it's open to whoever wants to tune in. The only thing that I feel is a shame is that we don't have, I don't know, an audio source or a video source or something that we can share, but we can always talk about these topics and create educational content.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that part. And the one thing that I used to tell people before the pandemic is we were so focused on social media, we got our heads down and we're not talking. We'll sit next to somebody and we'll sit there and text everybody because we don't have this fear that, the phone, if somebody actually calls you, there's something wrong. You want to text, and you're so focused on the social media that we were actually kind of going away from each other, that we weren't having the conversations. But now all of a sudden the pandemic happens, and all of a sudden I'm now talking to people in Ireland and Japan and Australia, because this is the only way that we can actually do that. And so now I'm thinking, this is great. We've now got a channel where we've opened up, we're talking to people that we may not have had we just gone with social media and our heads down and texting. This has opened up, and it's been great. And I think with like British Naturism, I've seen the numbers going up for a lot of their forums and their talks. I think it's great. They're getting people all over, and they're saying, this is great. I'm talking, they're hearing great speakers that they may not have heard before. There wasn't the interest. And so now you're seeing this. I mean, I'm talking to you, and this is great because we may not have had that opportunity before.
Most definitely. And I think that's where we need to focus more of our attention. How can we build these relationships and collaborate, share our audiences and platforms, but also get conversations going? And despite the fact that sometimes things can get out of hand on Twitter or other social media, what I really value is the opportunity that we have to establish dialogues and conversations and channels. And I think if I would give people some sort of advice on this, is to avoid closing those channels of communication and avoid radicalization or demonizing someone that might have a different perspective. It's always better to listen to them and to, if you want to share your views, but always in a civilized manner. And if you guys don't agree, then there's nothing wrong with not agreeing. There's nothing wrong with seeing the world differently. There's nothing wrong with having different interests. I think there's enough opportunities for all of us. The worst thing that we could do is close the channel and also become more and more separate apart, like not interested in what the other person has to say. The other person could have a very valid point that I wasn't aware of. And if I give them the opportunity, I might learn from that. And I think that that's something that has been, we've been losing it on social media, but it's never too late to try to build those bridges again, or just understand that we might see the world differently, and there's nothing wrong with that either. We might not have anything to talk about, and that's fine.
Well, I agree. I mean, sometimes the conversations are very painful, or there seems to be a lot of acrimony, and I don't think there needs to be. I think if you've got a point and you want to, bring it across, I think it can be done in a civil way, because if you, make somebody angry, they're going to shut down, and you got to listen to it because you've got, all this other stuff that you got to do. And, these personal attacks, like I said, we're such a small market of the population that we need to embrace everybody, and we need to make sure that everybody feels okay and that they feel listened to. But I think when we have people that are pointing the fingers and saying, we expect that the organizations or one person is going to solve it, we all have the power to solve our problems. I mean, I didn't sit there and wait and say, you know what, I don't want to see Anna fall down, but I'm just going to sit home and point fingers and be a keyboard warrior. I put boots on the ground, and I got myself on Twitter, which was way out of my comfort level, because I wanted to say, hey, I want to see people like me there. So this is me. I did it. It wasn't comfortable, but I did it. So if I can do it, you can do it. I've got a and, for an organization that may not know what I'm thinking, I'm going to do something about it. And so I think that's where my frustration is I'm hearing some great, things, but I'm also hearing a lot of criticizing about it, but they don't want to do anything about it. And so I'm thinking sometimes maybe the organizations are not for those people, and not what being, rules and clubs and different things that may not be applicable to them. It can't be everything to everybody. And, we're trying to do for the majority. And like I said, the organizations have a responsibility to try to change things and make things go forward. Not going to solve everything, but I think some people need to take responsibility and make the changes themselves. If they have something that they can do about it, they need to do about it. Don't wait for somebody else, or don't wait for the organizations to try to do that.
Have you noticed a change in your confidence participating more and more in these forums and places? Do you feel less of an introvert?
I still have that big fear because I don't like talking about myself, but I talk very passionately about naturism, so I get excited and I want to impart that. But I admit the first video that I did for you, I was so nervous and I thought I'm never going to make, I'm never going to be, to get through this. And then you challenged me to do the second one. So by challenging me and saying, I know you can do this, can you do this for me? I felt that if you felt that I was confident to do it, I could do that. You didn't shame me into something. You're just going to be sitting there and you're not going to be effective. What you did is you said, I think you can do this. And so it got me out of my comfort level. And that's what I'm saying. If everybody can kind of make that step and say, and be supported, I think anybody could do anything. And so I appreciate these opportunities to sit in front of there, because like I said, I get so nervous about this, but I'm so passionate that I think that everybody could benefit from nudism and naturism that I'm willing to do that.
I think you've exposed my hidden agenda to get more people on video and creating content. I mean, that's partially true. I've noticed that a lot of people have a very powerful platform and ideals and message, but they are very scared of getting out of their comfort zone. And personally, I noticed that video is very powerful and effective. That's why I focus most of my creation process on video. Plus, I'm not very good at drawing or other forms of creation. So I noticed that through this channel, I was able to establish relationships. I was able to communicate. I was able to, you know, convey ideas that inspired people, that got them to want to be a part of it, and so on. So part of my evil plan is to get more and more people that are promoting naturism to feel comfortable through video and to express their ideas and their thoughts to this. So if everything goes well, in a couple of years or in a couple of months, we'll have more people speaking directly to their audience and people who are interested in what they're promoting. So thank you for helping me do that.
Well, thank you for giving me the confidence to be able to do this, because like I said, I didn't want to do any of this, but I thought, if you thought that I had, the aptitude, then maybe if I got out of my comfort level and talked and someone could relate to what I'm saying, then if that's a benefit, I'm all for that.
And I want to ask, I don't know if this is I don't know what you'll think about this question, but I want to ask you, how do you feel regarding the impact that your work has done in naturism? Have you noticed a difference?
I I believe I have, based on the feedback gotten from people. I've had people say, I joined, an organization because of you. I've had women say, you gave me the courage to go to a club or take my clothes off for the first time. And I just almost cry when I see that, because it's just, oh my gosh, I can't believe that something I said or something that I did, or I was an example. And that's my goal. I mean, I am basically, for the lack of exposing myself out there on Twitter for good and bad. And when I get that positive reinforcement, it's just like I'm on the right path. And I thank people when they say, something. It's like, then I know I'm on the right path. And conversely, when somebody says, hey, I think you just got it all wrong, I have to take that feedback. I do take that feedback. Sometimes it's a little harsh, but I wouldn't put myself out there if I wasn't, I don't want to hear all the good stuff. I need to hear some of the bad stuff, and I need to hear the stuff that needs to be changed. And so that's what's so powerful about being on the platform is, you know, I'm hearing things that need to be changed that I didn't maybe know about before. And so this is great. And this is things that I can take back and try to work on, you know, for the organizations.
I think at the end of the day, when we have to go through so many obstacles, jump so many loops, do so many things to be able to get the message out, that when someone walks up to you at an event or at a club or whatever, and they tell you how the work that you did inspired them to take part in naturism, it's really hard to describe that satisfaction that you feel. It might be a little bit ego, but it's also, it makes you feel good because you feel like at the end of the day, all the work you put into it actually provided someone value, actually made someone feel better about themselves. So I personally think that that's something that I really enjoy, that makes all this mess of being censored and shut and criticized and questioned and just all the stuff that we have to go through. That's the reason why I do it, because someday someone will walk up to me and share their story of how I had a minimum or some influence or whatever in making them feel better about themselves.
Yeah, it's a reinforcement that I always say it's a reinforcement that I'm in working. And so, like I said, when I hear that and I read that, it buoys me. And like I said, I also hear the feedback that maybe I'm not quite on message, and I take that to heart. I try to read everything and say, okay, some of it's a little difficult, but I need to hear it because, like I said, I don't want to just be here and have everything be perfect. I know it's
Sure.
not. And so the days that I get the reinforcement help me through some of the bad days that maybe I'm, a little off message or haven't quite gotten it right. So
But I think another healthy advice for someone who is starting off is to learn to understand the right proportion of everything. So we can't feel great when people reinforce what we like, and we can't feel terrible when people tell us something that they don't like about us. We have to understand that there's a proportion. There's only so much good that we're responsible for, and there's only so much bad that we're responsible for. And if we understand this middle ground and we don't lose the floor, we'll ultimately feel better about ourselves, because I think that people who put themselves out there in social media and are promoting an idea, a way of life, a philosophy, sometimes feel more responsibility with their audience than they should. And I think that can be dangerous because it can lead you to unhealthy practices in order to try to satisfy everyone. I'll share an example. For a very long time, I tried to keep myself away from a healthy lifestyle, like doing exercise or eating the right things. I mean, I really enjoy eating greasy food, and I really enjoy drinking, and I enjoy partying. I enjoy doing a lot of things that are not healthy. But I also felt that if I was if I was athletic, people would put down my work and my effort. They would say that, oh, it's easy for you to say because you blah 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 blah. And I think that if I listen to some of these ridiculous claims or ideas and I try to adapt myself to meeting them, then ultimately I'm going to damage myself. And at the end of the day, people that disagree with what you do will still disagree with what you do. I don't know if you've been in similar situations, but my suggestion would be to learn that you're only responsible for so much, and there's things that are out of your capabilities, and you have to make peace with that. And don't believe all the good things people say about you, and don't believe all the bad things people say about you. But it's hard. It's hard because there's a light shining on you, and people are seeing you, and you could start wondering if what they're saying is true, or if you're doing something wrong, or if it's a bad place to be in.
I understand, and being relatively new, under 2 years with all the social media platforms that I'm on, I admit, I mean, there's been days that some of the unwarranted criticism has gotten me down. I have to admit, because I do take it personally. I'm starting to realize that I can't be everything to everybody, and if I start compromising it to satisfy that, then I'm satisfying nobody, because then I'm compromising what I'm there for. It may not be perfect for everybody, and I understand that, but I admit I go through days where I think, am I doing the right thing? Should I just chuck it? But it's getting a little easier when I start, you're right, tempering the good with the bad. And like I said, I'm not here just for the accolades and yes, you're doing everything right, because if it was, then we wouldn't be, having this conversation with all, what's going wrong with some of the organizations. I do want to hear what's bad. I would just prefer that it not be a pointed thing, like I'm going, I expect you to solve all my problems, or I don't like you personally. And I always just say move on by, because I'm not going to be everything to everybody. If they cannot make it personal, then it helps. I do still get that. But, I am getting better. I must say I am getting better, because it's, as I go along. But it's a learning process for myself too.
Tell me a little bit about your goals with what you have going on. What would you like to accomplish?
When I first started out, I pretty much thought it was going to be easy. I'm going to get all these women and everything's going to be great. I'm going to get all the diversity and all the things that people wanted. And like I said, it was great on paper until I started, I don't want trying to get pictures of our members. People want to see people that look like them. Well, the idea is nobody wants to be that person to take the picture. And so it's hard if you don't see yourself to say, hey, why don't you be that person? And then they'll see you and then they'll want to come. So trying to get, that conversation. So I realized, okay, I have to start modifying some of the things that I thought were going to be not easier, but I'm a naturist. Hey, everybody else wants to be. No. So like, for example, pre-COVID, we were going to have where we could bring a friend to, a gathering, maybe, a neutral place like a house or a spa or something like that. And then, that got shut down. And then I realized that wasn't the easiest thing, because people had to show up in person. Is it going to be clothing optional? Do I have to take my clothes off? I'm nervous. So out of British Naturism, they've done a great job. Irish Naturist Association, they do Zoom conferences. And I thought, what a great thing. Wait a minute. I'm sitting in the comfort of my house. I can be dressed. If I get nervous and the conversation gets out of hand, I can just turn this off. So it's like I'm starting to modify things and saying, wait a minute, why not do it this way? I mean, that it wasn't as easy as I thought it was. And like I said, by focusing on certain things, people feel targeted. And then that's another issue is, they feel targeted. So how do we say we would like to invite you, but we're not targeting you and trying to pull you in, and because of, some certain thing, like a hidden agenda. So, that's kind of like, okay, now I'm starting to realize it's not as easy, and it's going to be a process, and it's going to be work. And I may be a catalyst where people see me as the one person that can make the change, but I need help. I need help from people that can help me, members, any kind of comments and stuff like that. I'm willing to listen, if it's constructive criticism or something that can actually be effective, something that we can change. So, that's kind of where I am right now.
I think the best way to accomplish that is to lead by example. It's going to be really hard for you to say, hey, you're a woman, maybe you should come and get naked with us. But if women have the opportunity to see what you're doing, your work, then they want to take part of it. That's a strategy that we implemented when we first started creating content. I've never created content before, and it was really hard for me to tell people that were going to our events that they should appear in our pictures. It's like having someone who I'm just meeting because this community is new tell me that they want to take my pictures naked. It's like, what do they want to do with them? There's a lot of insecurities that pop up, and it makes sense because, not everyone has the best intentions. So what I first started doing is I started appearing in the pictures, and then I started inviting people to participate, turning their like not looking towards the camera in the opposite direction. So you would only see their backs. And that got people interested in wanting to participate. And I would share the pictures, and it was like a celebration. We would celebrate that, you know, X number of people went to the event, and it was great. We had wonderful time. And then that started creating people the environment required for them to want to turn around. So the next step was, okay, so we'll take a picture, and whoever doesn't want to appear in the picture, they could turn back against the camera, and whoever feels comfortable being facing the camera, they can turn around and face the camera. So that got more people wanting to feel open about it. And then when I shifted from pictures to video, I was doing the same. I already had a background of creating content to promote. People were seeing that it was effective because more and more people would say, I saw a picture and I'm here because of that. Then they would see the value in the the content that you're creating. So from there on, I started making videos, and the more people saw the videos, the more people were attracted to the videos, the more people wanted to be a part of the videos. So now it's really easy for me to just, if I'm at any random naked place, take out a camera and ask people if they feel comfortable, because we always have to make sure we have people's consent. But 9 out of 10 times people would say yes. Or if they want to participate but don't feel comfortable with their face being in the shot, that's perfectly fine as well. We can either cut it out, censor it, or frame it differently, but eventually those people will feel more and more comfortable. And I think that COVID brings this unique opportunity because people can appear in the picture with a face mask, because obviously we need people to wear face masks. And maybe when the pandemic is over, those people already feel comfortable participating, already understand what the value of that is, and probably more willing they are to continue participating. And the next step is when those people feel so comfortable that they want to share their naturist experience through pictures and video on their individual platforms, on their social media networks. And I think that's the way that this evolves. Getting started is the most difficult part of all. But once we have this ball rolling, it will eventually, with time, grow and grow. And then in retrospective, everyone would say that it was so easy and it was so obvious that it was going to work.
No, that's a problem that we were having is I said, for our website, it has to be NR members. They have to be members. I mean, come on, we need to get that. Trying to get people love to be nude and they love to be at the events, but they don't necessarily want their picture taken. And so I was revamping the advertising for the Women in Nude Recreation winter program with my co-chair. We couldn't get anybody to take the picture. So I am in the I'm on like the rack cards and I'm in the brochures. And most of it is, you can't see me, I've got a hat. And so you wouldn't necessarily know me. There's a few pictures that you'd actually recognize me. And it was like, why is that all you? And I said, because we couldn't get people to take the pictures. And so now we're going to try to do maybe some implied nudity, or like you said, maybe they're turned around, or it's a 3/4 where they're not feeling like, for lack of a better term, more exposed. And so, like I said, we can't show pictures of people that look like you if there's nobody ready, willing to step up to say, here we have the pictures of people that look like you. That's the most difficult thing. We need that one person to stand up and say, I'm going to be that person. That's what I always say on Twitter.
That person
I am the person. Pardon?
That person has already stood up, and it's a matter of time. It's a matter of patience. It's a matter of consistency. We have to continue working forward towards this goal. But I feel very optimistic. I think that when COVID ends, there's going to be a much more united community, and people are going to be more and more eager to go out to participate in these events. So I'm excited for the future. I'm having a really hard time dealing with, being locked up, having to cancel or postpone our events, because I didn't realize how much I enjoyed the events and organizing and all the work that we're doing until it's no longer possible, until the authorities tell you that you have to stay home, that you can't go out, that you can't organize events. That's when you realize that you really, really enjoy. I knew I loved it, but I had no idea how much I loved it. And traveling is also a big deal for me. I really, really love to travel, and I think you do as well.
Oh, yes, yes.
And
I
not being
loved it.
able, we had to cancel a trip to Canada, and we were thinking about going also to New York, and we were thinking about going to Europe, and just not being able to do it is frustrating. But at the end of the day, I feel like when when things go back to what we consider to be normal, if they ever do, there's going to be so many opportunities for us. And naturism is, in part, a solution to a lot of the problems that we face in society. And we need people to know that. So I thank you for the work that you're doing and the work that other people are doing. And those, you may consider that what you're doing is little, but it's not. There's a lot of people that will feel inspired and that will want to continue to do this. I'm already noticing a lot of young people in countries where there isn't a whole lot of organized naturism or options, or maybe they don't like what's going on, and they reach out to me and they tell me what they have going on. They feel inspired, and that's nice. That feels really good. I really like when people do that. I don't like when people expect me to solve all of their problems, like you mentioned. But when people tell me, hey, I have this going on, can you help me with your experience? I'm more than glad to.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I agree.
So, um, is there any other projects or things that you have going on besides participating as a director? What is your position in Anner?
Yeah, board of directors for Anner West. So
How
I'm a
does this
director.
work? Is there like a specific position at the board of directors, or are there just a lot of directors? How is the structure of the institution?
Okay, we have 9 directors, and then we have 4 officers. And so we have the president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer, and then we have the 9 board of directors. And so, like I said, I was sitting out in the audience thinking, boy, I'd like to get I'd like to get my ideas out there. And so, being on the board of directors, I actually now have a voice. I was elected for 2 years, and so I'm going to have 2 years of making, hopefully making some changes.
What are your direct responsibilities there?
Well, as a director, we're all the directors basically have the same things. I'm co-chair for Winter, so that's my specialty. But I'm also on other committees as far as we have the website. I've been very vocal about the website, very vocal about Anar's website by saying, "Hey, listen, we can no longer use models. Does that look like us? It's you're doing the Hollywood version of what they think nudists look like. That's not right. We're attracting the wrong kind of people." And so I'm very vocal about that, trying to get it so we have diversity, showing that we are, inclusive, that we're trying to, get people to get the picture. If we can get the picture of the people on there, people say, hey, I see myself, that's where we're going to get it. But we need that first step. And that's the hardest part, is getting that first step. And so I'm working with the website because I believe that's a big thing, because that's where a lot of non-naturists go. They hear of Anna, oh, let me check that out. And, that's their first probably foray into seeing what, naturism is all about. So I want to correctly reflect that, because what kind of people are we attracting by having thin, nude, young people? I think that sends the wrong message. Everybody wants to look at pretty people. Yeah, that's Hollywood's version of what they think that naturism is, not the reality. And we don't want to perpetuate that.
Is
So,
Anner West? I'm not really sure how the Anner structure works, so that's why some of these questions might be a little dumb. But is Anner West independent from Anner, or how does that work? How do the regions work?
oh, okay, we have the ANR offices in Kissimmee, Florida, and we branch out from there. So we have like the ANR West, we have the Pacific Northwest, we have ANR Southwest. So they're broken up in territories so that they're more manageable. Because we want all the folks in ANR West to be able to get together. We have the resorts in that area. Florida has their resorts. Florida has their own standalone, ANR Florida. So they're broken down into nice little regions where it's cozy, and you can get to know the people. You can get to go to the board. You can sit in on any of the meetings. They're not secret. That's certainly not what we want. And so it's just broken down in little territories where, people can feel a little more manageable.
I see that West serves California, Nevada, Utah, um, Colorado. Is that correct? Wyoming, New
I,
Mexico, Arizona, and Hawaii, right?
yes,
And
yes.
I suppose based on the geography that most of the members concentrate in California region.
There's quite a few folks in California. Arizona has quite a contingent. Colorado has a few, and of course we have folks in Mexico too, which is a great alliance. So yeah, mostly in
And
California.
Hawaii, is there a lot of clubs or things going on in Hawaii?
We actually have two where there's Hangin' Loose, which is a landed club, and we have an affiliate, which is Swim Free Hawaii, where you can go and go on a boat, and they take you out and you can be nude out in the water in a protected area. Unfortunately, with COVID, they are so restrictive that they've basically taken their license away, and we don't know when they're going to get a chance to open. So there's possibilities, in Florida, excuse me, in Hawaii, and we do have quite a few members there on the different islands. But yeah, until we
And
can open.
the weather is great. Or I'm not familiar with it, but I imagine that it's a nice tropical climate, so it's perfect for being naked.
Oh, it's beautiful. I've been to both, and I highly recommend it. And that was one of the places I was. I have not been outside the country in probably 18 years. And so I'm getting itchy. I want to, collect a few more, like we were talking before. I've been to all the continents, 68 countries. I was hoping to get my 70th. And so this is, I've had itchy, my passport's getting mold on it. But one of the things I was really excited about is talking to other countries. I'm now focusing on naturist opportunities. And so when I went to Australia, I said, hey, I'm going to Australia. What do you recommend? Oh boy, I got all kinds of offers to go to different places. I visited Tindo. Somebody said, do you know about Maslin Beach? I said, no, loved Maslin Beach. So now I'm all about the naturist opportunities that I may never have known, had I just try to look them up, or, maybe I wouldn't have even heard of. So I'm excited when I want, get out. I can't wait to get back to Ireland because I've got a list of all the great beaches and whiskeys to try. But they told me about that. But all these great places that I would have never known. So once we get going, it's going to be all naturist, travel.
I think that's also really nice about participating in the international realm, that you also network with a lot of great people. So when you go to these places, you also have the experience of meeting people that are from there. I haven't talked a lot about this, but I really liked. I don't know if you're familiar with couch surfing.
Yes.
I really liked couch surfing, and now I feel like I'm in a situation where couch surfing and naturism, like the concepts are very similar, because fortunately, because of the success that we have had with what we've been doing, if we ever travel to Ireland or to other places in the world, most likely we'll find someone there that we know and will give us this more of this local experience. And I really love that, because going to the resorts and the hotels, it's great. It's a really relaxing experience, but it's an artificial experience. And being able to see the places, to meet the people, like for example, when we went to Hollywood Beach, Martin was very nice to pick us up at the airport, host us, take us to different places, and he is very well connected with all the community. So I had the opportunity of meeting Shirley and Richard Mason. I had the opportunity of talking to different people that have a lot of things that are going on, the owners of certain clubs, and just I don't know. I've really enjoyed my experience in naturism, because I've noticed that 9 out of 10 times people are very welcoming. People are very nice. They're very, I don't know. It's a really great community. We can talk about negative aspects behind it, and that's great, and we can work to change those. But in general, people should understand that we have a great community. We just need to work to keep it that way or make it even better. And it'd be great if in the future we have enough tools, enough networking, enough websites or whatever, in order for this to be accessible to all, you don't have to have a successful platform in naturism to go to different places and meet different people and have this welcoming local experience.
No, I agree. The minute I say that I'm going to go somewhere, all the naturists are suggesting these great places. And I think also when you connect with more authentic, the bonds that I've made, I can tell that they're authentic, and there's more of because you have that common bond and you understand that you seem to relate on a different level. And for the women, I must say, for the women that I've met, there's a very strong bond. And I've never felt like out in the world, I hate to say it, sometimes it's a cat fight with women because, there's always that competition. Do not see that. I do not see that in naturism. And the women that have reached out to me, or I've reached out to them and said, hey, I could use your help on something, or I would like to run this by you, or I've got this idea, willing to share. They don't want to keep it there. They don't want to one up anybody. Nobody wants to be, out there, trying to walk over everybody else to be the top. I don't find that.
No.
And so this is so wonderful that the relationships that I feel like I've made are more authentic. And I think that more people could benefit just even from that.
I agree. So before we wrap up the conversation, can you tell us a little bit about the work that you have going on with British Naturism and Irish Naturism? What are you collaborating with them? What's going on?
I'm members of both organizations. And one of the things that has been great is British Naturism. I've done some forums and talks, and it's been great because what I'm learning, I'm imparting what I have from the United States, which is, sometimes a completely different outlook or experience. And what I get back is what they have. And so there's some things that I think, hey, it's easy to be solved, but it's not solved there. Or they say, we've done it this way. Hey, and I say, I would like to replicate that from here. And so what's great is having the talks is I've learned, and I've talked to a lot of people. I love the Q&As because they're always asking questions that maybe I didn't think about because I'm here. But what is their perception when they come over here? I did a beaches of the North America and Canada, and touched a little bit on Mexico that you were on. And it was great. Everybody had these great questions that they wanted to know because when they come over here, we want to provide a safe environment. And so they were all excited to hear about the beaches that we have here. And so when we are welcoming and we say, hey, when you come over, this is and when we go to Ireland, this is a great beach you'd want to go to, or maybe stay away from this one, maybe it's not safe. This is the kind of information that we want to impart. And like I said, I don't want to try to reinvent the wheel by myself. So if somebody has a better way of doing something or a perception that I didn't even think about, I don't want to be sitting here in a bubble trying to make, decisions. So when I get the global aspect of it, I really feel like I'm making a well-rounded decision and hearing from, perspectives that maybe, I hadn't thought about.
So now a little bit of a controversial question. Do you think ANR is interested in collaborating with other national organizations, or do you find a resistance? Because I see that you are very well involved, and I've noticed that ANR West is a little bit different from the rest of the regions. Do you get the sense? Do you think they're willing to? Do you think there's interest? Do you think in the future we might have more of a globalized community?
That was one of the things that I said, we can't be just by ourselves. We need to, like I said, we're not that big, and in the world it's on. And so I have a really good relationship with ANR International, and saying, you know what, let's foster those British Naturism. That's how we got involved in British Naturism, was I was asked to be a speaker, and I said, what else can we do to promote it? And it kind of snowballed from there. They became a sponsor. We had more of a speakers from, we had Kathy Watson, which is our president. And I said, I would like to make more of an alliance. So I've been trying to say, I'm working well with them. Let's try to, reach out for them. Let's do it with the Irish Naturist Association. There's a lot more organizations that I am not quite involved in, but I'm saying, let's do that. And I don't know if the conversation has ever been there, or if it kind of, we got, like concentric and egocentric and kind of pulled back. And so that's what I'm fostering. And so when things happen, I'm very involved with them and saying, this is what happened. We have a new president, for the lady president for INA. Let's go ahead and say, congratulations, from, ANR and not just not ANR West, but, ANR International. Let's do that. And I do want to oversee is let's work together. So I feel like that's my contribution, is starting to open up those channels.
Okay, awesome. Well, Linda, thank you very much for taking part in this conversation. Is there anything else that you would like to mention? Do you want to share with us your social media and where people can find you and be a little bit more familiar with things that you have going on?
Oh my God. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for getting me out of my comfort level and doing these, because I've had great fun working with you. You're one of the people that I look to for guidance. And I really feel like you've mentored me on certain things, got me out of my comfort level, which now means that I can impart information to people. So I appreciate working with you. I really do. I really respect you, really respect the work you've done. And you've got that youth factor that it's like, okay, this is great. I'm glad to see that somebody younger is so passionate about it like me. So let's see, on Twitter, I'm at True Blue Nude. I'm on MeWe for True Blue Nude, and I'm on the Naturist Hub, but that's just a
Okay. So I'll share these social media links so you guys can find her in the description of this video and the YouTube version. And I want to thank Linda for the work that she's doing. I think it's something that is very brave of her to get out of her comfort zone, to be willing to put herself out there, to be willing to establish these relationships, collaborations, working together, getting her hands dirty. And I think that we need more and more people like this that want to make a difference in the world. And despite the fact that there's a lot of things that can be improved, as long as we have valuable people like Linda involved, I'm sure that we're headed in the right direction. So thank you guys for listening to this. I want to apologize for the audio. I've noticed that the connection isn't that great and that sometimes the dialogue doesn't go through completely. I have no control over that, so you guys are going to have to forgive me on that one. But I feel like at the end of the day, the message went through and we had a great dialogue. So thank you for taking part of it. I'm going to stop the recording. Don't go.